My name is Geneva Washington, and I'm 67 years old. Last night, my 3 adult children, Raymond, 42, Minnie, 39, and Theodore, 35, held what they called a family intervention at my house. They sat me down in my own living room and told me I was selfish, controlling, and the reason our family was falling apart. "Mom, you need to hear this," Raymond said, his voice cold. "You've been manipulating this family for years, making everything about you, playing the victim. We're done with it." "You guilt trip us constantly," Minnie added. "Nothing we do is ever good enough for you. You're always complaining that we don't visit enough, don't call enough, don't appreciate you enough. It's exhausting." "And you play favorites," Theodore said. "You've always loved Raymond more than Minnie and me. We can all see it. We're tired of pretending we don't." I sat there in shock as my own children. The children I'd raised alone after their father died, the children I'd sacrificed everything for, tore me apart with accusations I didn't understand. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice shaking. "I've never tried to manipulate any of you. I love you all equally. I just want to be part of your lives." "That's exactly the problem," Raymond said. "You want to be part of our lives too much. You can't accept that we're adults with our own families. You constantly interfere. You criticize our spouses. You undermine our parenting. You make every family gathering about your needs instead of just letting us be happy." "We've talked to a therapist," Minnie said. "She says you show signs of narcissistic personality disorder, that you've been emotionally abusing us our whole lives and we just didn't realize it." "What?" I said, feeling like the room was spinning. "A therapist? What therapist? You've been talking to a therapist about me." "We needed professional help to understand why you are the way you are," Theodore said. "And the therapist helped us see that we need to set boundaries. We need to protect ourselves and our families from your toxic behavior." "So here are the new rules," Raymond said, pulling out a piece of paper. "You don't drop by our houses unannounced anymore. You don't call more than once a week. You don't give unsolicited advice about our marriages or how we raise our kids. And you don't guilt trip us about spending holidays with our in-laws instead of you. If you can't follow these rules, we'll have to go no contact." I stared at them in disbelief. You're giving me rules about how I can interact with my own children." "These are boundaries, Mom," Minnie said. "Healthy boundaries that we should have set years ago." "We know you're going to play the victim about this," Raymond added. "You're going to tell everyone we're being cruel to you. That's what you always do. But we're prepared for that. We've already talked to the rest of the family and explained the situation. Everyone understands that we're just trying to protect ourselves from your manipulation." That's when I realized. My children hadn't just turned on me. They'd poisoned the entire family against me first, making sure no one would believe my side of the story. They'd turned me into the family villain. But what my children didn't know, what they'd forgotten in their rush to diagnose me with a personality disorder they'd learned about from some therapist, was that I had evidence. Text messages, emails, voicemails, documentation of years of the real story they were now trying to rewrite. The next morning, I didn't argue with them. I didn't play the victim like they expected. Instead, I told the whole truth. I sent a detailed email to every single member of our extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, everyone my children had already spoken to, with screenshots, receipts, and evidence of exactly what had been happening in our family for the past 10 years. And when the truth came out, everything my children had built, their narrative, their alliances, their justification for treating me like a villain, came crashing down. But to understand how we got to that intervention, how my children came to believe I was a narcissistic manipulator, and what the real truth was that I exposed the next morning, I need to take you back to where it all started. I became a single mother 30 years ago when my husband Porter died in a car accident. Raymond was 12, Minnie was 9, and Theodore was 5. Porter's death was sudden and devastating. We had no life insurance. Porter had always said he'd get around to it, but never did. We had a small amount of savings, but it wasn't enough to support a family of 4. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I was a secretary at a law office. At night and on weekends, I cleaned houses. I worked 60 to 70 hours a week for 15 years until all 3 kids finished college. I didn't remarry. I didn't date. I poured every ounce of energy I had into raising my children and making sure they had opportunities I never had. Raymond went to college on a partial scholarship. I paid the rest, working extra hours, taking out loans I'd spend the next decade paying off. Minnie wanted to study abroad for a semester. I made it happen, even though it meant I couldn't afford to fix my car's transmission and had to walk to work for 6 months. Theodore wanted to go to a private university instead of the state school. I took out a second mortgage on my house to pay for it. I sacrificed everything for my children, everything. And they knew it. Growing up, they thanked me constantly. Raymond would say, "Mom, I don't know how you do it, you're amazing." Minnie would hug me and say, "When I grow up, I want to be just like you, strong and selfless." Theodore would tell his friends, "My mom is a superhero." I thought we had a good relationship. I thought they appreciated everything I'd done. But apparently, I was wrong. 10 years ago, everything started to change. Raymond got married to a woman named Estelle. I liked Estelle initially. She seemed nice, responsible, and good for Raymond. But within months of the wedding, I started noticing problems. Estelle was controlling. She monitored Raymond's phone. She got upset if he spent time with his siblings without her. She criticized him constantly. His job wasn't good enough, his clothes weren't nice enough, he didn't make enough money. I watched my confident, happy son turn into someone anxious and withdrawn. One day, Raymond came to my house and broke down crying. "Mom, I don't know if I made a mistake marrying Estelle. She's so critical of everything I do. I feel like I can't do anything right." "Raymond, if you're unhappy, you don't have to stay," I said gently. "You're young. If this marriage isn't working, it's better to end it now than spend years being miserable." "I know," Raymond said. "I've been thinking about it. I don't know what to do." A week later, Estelle called me. "Geneva, Raymond told me you said he should divorce me. How dare you interfere in our marriage? You're his mother, not his wife. Stay out of it." "I didn't tell Raymond to divorce you," I said, shocked. "He came to me upset, and I told him he doesn't have to stay in a marriage that makes him unhappy. That's not the same thing." "You're trying to break us up because you can't stand that Raymond has a wife now," Estelle accused. "You want him all to yourself. That's sick, Geneva." She hung up before I could respond. 2 days later, Raymond called. "Mom, Estelle is really upset about what you said. I need you to apologize to her." "Apologize for what?" I asked. "For telling you that you deserve to be happy." "You told me to divorce her," Raymond said. "No, I didn't," I said firmly. "Raymond, you came to me crying about how unhappy you were. I said if the marriage isn't working, you don't have to stay. That's different from telling you to divorce her." "Well, that's not how Estelle heard it," Raymond said. "And I need my wife and my mother to get along, so please just apologize." "I'm not going to apologize for something I didn't do," I said. "But Raymond, I'm worried about you. You seem so different since you got married. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Raymond said, his voice cold. "I just need you to respect my marriage. Can you do that?" "Of course," I said. "I've always respected your marriage." But after that conversation, Raymond started pulling away. He stopped coming by for our regular Sunday dinners. He stopped calling as often. When I'd call him, he'd be short with me, saying he was busy. Estelle, I later learned, had given Raymond an ultimatum. "It's either me or your mother. If you want this marriage to work, you need to set boundaries with Geneva." And Raymond chose Estelle. 8 years ago, Minnie got married to a man named Curtis. I had reservations about Curtis from the start. He seemed arrogant and self-centered. But I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want a repeat of what happened with Raymond and Estelle. At Minnie's wedding, Curtis gave a speech during the reception. "I want to thank Minnie's family for welcoming me," Curtis said. "Especially her mother, Geneva, who I know had some doubts about whether I was good enough for her daughter." People laughed uncomfortably. I was mortified. I'd never said anything about Curtis not being good enough. I'd been nothing but welcoming to him. After the reception, I pulled Minnie aside. "Sweetheart, why did Curtis say I had doubts about him? I've never said anything negative about him." "Come on, Mom," Minnie said. "We all know you didn't approve of Curtis. You can pretend all you want, but we can tell." "Minnie, I swear to you, I never said anything negative about Curtis," I insisted. "If I seemed hesitant, it's only because I barely knew him before you got engaged. You only dated for 6 months. I just wanted to make sure you were certain." "See, there you go," Minnie said. "You're doing it right now. You can't just be happy for me. You have to express your concerns and make it about your feelings." "That's not what I'm doing," I said, hurt. "I am happy for you. I just want you to be happy." "If you were really happy for me, you wouldn't have spent the entire engagement asking if we were sure we wanted to get married so quickly," Minnie said. "You wouldn't have suggested we do premarital counseling. You wouldn't have made all those little comments about how marriage is hard and we need to be realistic." "I suggested premarital counseling because I think it's a good idea for any couple," I said. "And I never said marriage is hard to discourage you. I said it because it's true. Marriage takes work. I wanted you to go into it with your eyes open." "You just can't help yourself, can you?" Minnie said. "Even now, on my wedding day, you're trying to make it about your wisdom and experience instead of just celebrating with me." She walked away, leaving me standing alone, confused about what I'd done wrong. After that, Minnie started pulling away too. She stopped inviting me to things. When I'd suggest getting together for lunch, she'd say she was too busy. When I'd ask about her life, she'd give me one-word answers. Curtis, I later learned, had told Minnie, "Your mom is toxic. She's passive-aggressive and controlling. You need to set boundaries or she'll ruin our marriage." And Minnie believed him. 5 years ago, Theodore went through a difficult time. He'd graduated from that expensive private university I'd helped pay for, but he was struggling to find a job in his field. He was living in an expensive apartment he couldn't afford, getting deeper into debt. Theodore called me one night in a panic. "Mom, I'm in trouble. I'm 3 months behind on rent. My landlord is threatening to evict me. I don't know what to do." "Theodore, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "How much do you owe?" $4,000, Theodore admitted. "Okay," I said, even though $4,000 was a huge amount of money for me. "I'll help you. But Theodore, you can't keep living in that expensive apartment. You need to move somewhere you can actually afford." "I know," Theodore said. "I'm looking for a cheaper place. I just need help getting out of this immediate crisis." I sent Theodore the $4,000. It wiped out most of my savings, but he was my son. I couldn't let him be evicted. 2 months later, Theodore called asking for money again. "Mom, I need $2,000 to cover utilities and food until my next paycheck." "Theodore, what happened to the money I sent you?" I asked. "I gave you $4,000 2 months ago." "I used it to pay my back rent like I said," Theodore answered. "But you should have had money left over," I pointed out. "And you were supposed to be moving to a cheaper apartment. What happened with that?" "I'm still looking," Theodore said defensively. "It's hard to find a place." "Theodore, I can't keep sending you money," I said gently. "I love you, but I'm on a fixed income. I'm retired now. I don't have thousands of dollars to keep giving you." "Are you serious?" Theodore said, his voice rising. "After everything you made me feel guilty about over the years, all the times you reminded me how much you sacrificed so I could go to private school. Now when I actually need help, you're going to say no." "I'm not saying no," I said. "I'm saying I can't afford to keep sending you large amounts of money. But I can help you budget. I can help you find a cheaper apartment. I can." "Forget it," Theodore interrupted. "I should have known you'd throw all your sacrifices in my face the second I needed help. You held those sacrifices over our heads our entire lives to make us feel guilty." "That's not true," I said, stunned. "I never held anything over your head. I was just trying to help you understand that I can't afford." "Save it," Theodore said. "I'll figure it out myself." He hung up. I later found out Theodore had asked his siblings for money instead. Raymond and Minnie both gave him money they could barely afford, because they felt guilty. And Theodore told them, Mom refused to help me after all she claims she did for us. It was all manipulation to keep us under her control. Theodore stopped speaking to me after that. When I'd call, he wouldn't answer. When I'd text, he'd leave me on read. 3 years ago, we had a family gathering for my 64th birthday. It was the first time in months I'd seen all 3 of my children in the same place. The gathering was tense. Raymond barely spoke to me. Minnie was cold. Theodore ignored me completely. At one point, I tried to talk to Minnie's daughter, my granddaughter Opal, who is 6 years old. Opal, sweetheart, how's school going? It's good, Grandma, Opal said shyly. What's your favorite subject? I asked. Before Opal could answer, Minnie swooped in. Opal, go play with your cousins. She turned to me. Mom, I'd appreciate it if you'd ask me before talking to Opal. I'm her mother. I get to decide who she interacts with. Minnie, she's my granddaughter, I said, confused. I was just asking about school. You don't get to just interrogate my child without my permission, Minnie said. That's exactly the kind of boundary-crossing behavior we've been talking about. I wasn't interrogating her, I said, my voice shaking. I was having a conversation with my granddaughter. You were grilling her with questions, Minnie said, making her uncomfortable. Opal, did Grandma's questions make you uncomfortable? Opal looked between us, confused. I don't know. See, Minnie said triumphantly. She's uncomfortable. Please respect my boundaries as a parent, Mom. I spent the rest of the gathering feeling like I was walking on eggshells. Every time I tried to talk to anyone, I was accused of being intrusive or crossing boundaries. When it was time to cut my birthday cake, Raymond made a speech. Mom, we want you to know that even though things have been difficult between us, we still love you. We just need you to respect that we're adults now with our own lives. Can you do that? Everyone was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to agree. Of course, I said quietly. I've always respected that you're adults. I don't understand why you think I haven't. That's the problem, Raymond said. You don't even see what you're doing. But we're hopeful that with time and effort, you'll learn to be the mother we need you to be. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and blew out my candles. That was the last birthday gathering I had with my children. The next year, they said they were too busy to celebrate. The year after that, they didn't even acknowledge my birthday until a week later when Raymond sent a brief text. Happy belated birthday. 1 year ago, I got a strange call from someone named Dr. Opal Martinez. Mrs. Washington, this is Dr. Martinez. I'm a family therapist. Your children have been attending sessions with me to work through some family issues, and they've suggested that it might be helpful for you to join us for a session. My children are in therapy, I asked, surprised. They didn't tell me. They wanted to work through some things first before involving you, Dr. Martinez explained. But they feel ready now to have a joint session where you can all discuss the issues in your relationship. What issues? I asked. Perhaps it's best if we discuss that in person, Dr. Martinez said. Would you be willing to come to a session? I agreed. Hopping this would be a chance to finally understand what I'd done wrong and how to fix it. The session was a nightmare. Dr. Martinez sat across from me, while my 3 children sat on a couch together, united against me. Geneva, your children have shared with me that they feel you've been emotionally manipulative throughout their lives, Dr. Martinez began. They feel that you guilt-trip them, play the victim, and make everything about your needs rather than theirs. Does that sound accurate to you? No, I said, shocked. I've never tried to manipulate them. I love them. Everything I've done has been to help them. That's what manipulators always say, Minnie said. You think you're helping, but you're actually just controlling us. Can you give me an example? I asked, genuinely confused. How about when Raymond got married? Theodore said. You tried to convince him to divorce Estelle because you couldn't handle him having a wife. That's not what happened, I said. Raymond came to me upset about his marriage. I told him he didn't have to stay if he was unhappy. That's not the same as telling him to divorce her. See, Raymond said to Dr. Martinez, this is what she does. She denies everything and rewrites history to make herself look innocent. Geneva, do you remember the conversation Raymond is referring to? Dr. Martinez asked. Yes, I said. Raymond came to me crying, saying he'd made a mistake marrying Estelle. I comforted him and said he didn't have to stay in a marriage that made him miserable. I was trying to support him. So you did tell him he could leave his marriage, Dr. Martinez said. I told him he didn't have to stay if he was unhappy, I corrected. That's different. Geneva, I'm hearing a lot of defensiveness from you, Dr. Martinez said. That's common in people who struggle to accept responsibility for their actions. Can you try to see how your children might have experienced your behavior as manipulative, even if that wasn't your intent? I looked at Dr. Martinez in disbelief. She'd already decided I was guilty. This wasn't a therapy session, it was an ambush. I don't think this is productive, I said, standing up. I came here hopping to understand what I'd done wrong, but it's clear you've all already decided I'm a villain, and nothing I say will change that. There it is, Minnie said. The victim act. See, Dr. Martinez. She can't even accept responsibility in a therapy session. I walked out. That therapy session was the beginning of the end. After that, my children were convinced they'd been emotionally abused by a narcissistic mother their whole lives. They read books about narcissistic parents. They watched YouTube videos about recovering from toxic mothers. They joined support groups for adult children of narcissists. They built an entire narrative where I was the villain and they were the victims. And they convinced the entire family to believe it. Which brings us to last night, the intervention. My 3 children sitting in my living room, telling me I was toxic and narcissistic, giving me rules about how I could contact them, threatening to cut me off completely if I didn't comply. We've already explained the situation to everyone in the family, Raymond said. Everyone understands that we're just trying to protect ourselves from your manipulation. So don't bother calling Aunt Geneva or Uncle Curtis to complain about us. They already know our side of the story. After they left, I sat alone in my house, feeling like my world had ended. My own children hated me. They'd turned the whole family against me, and I didn't even understand what I'd done wrong. But then something shifted. A memory surfaced. I remembered all the text messages, the emails, the voicemails, years of documentation of what had actually been happening in our family. My children thought they'd gotten ahead of me by telling everyone their version first. They thought I'd just accept being the villain because I had no way to defend myself. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I'd kept everything. Every text where they'd asked me for money and I'd sent it. Every email where I'd supported their decisions even when I had doubts. Every voicemail where I'd called just to check in, not to guilt trip, but because I loved them. I had evidence, I had proof, I had the truth. And the next morning, I was going to share it with everyone. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Hit that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Are the children being unfair? What would you do in Geneva's situation? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, Australia? Let me know. I didn't sleep at all the night of the intervention. I sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m., going through my phone, my emails, my computer files, gathering every piece of evidence that would prove what had really been happening in our family for the past 10 years. Text messages where Raymond asked me for advice about his marriage, then later claimed I was interfering. Emails where Minnie begged me to babysit her kids, then later accused me of overstepping boundaries. Bank statements showing the thousands of dollars I'd sent Theodore when he was in financial trouble, which he later claimed I refused to help with. Voicemails where my children called me crying, needing support, the same support they now claimed was manipulation. By dawn, I had everything organized. I created a detailed document with screenshots, timestamps, and context for every accusation my children had made against me. I included the real conversations, the real situations, the real truth they'd twisted into their narrative about me being a toxic narcissist. Then I wrote an email, not an angry rant, not a defensive screed, Just a calm, factual account of what had actually happened, backed up by evidence. At 7 a.m., I sent it to everyone. My siblings, my late husband's siblings, my cousins, family friends, neighbors who'd become like family over the years. Everyone my children had preemptively told their version of events to. The subject line read, "The truth about my relationship with my children." Within an hour, my phone started ringing. The first call came from my younger sister, Ruthie. "Geneva, I just read your email. Oh my God, I had no idea." "Raymond called me 2 weeks ago," Ruthie continued. "He said you'd been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder by a therapist and that you were trying to manipulate the family into taking your side. He said you'd probably reach out to me playing the victim and that I shouldn't believe anything you said. He told you I was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder," I repeated, stunned. "Ruthie, I've never been diagnosed with anything. I've never even seen that therapist. The only session I attended, I walked out of because it was clear they'd already decided I was guilty." "That's not what Raymond said," Ruthie admitted. "He said the therapist diagnosed you during multiple sessions and that you refused treatment." "That's a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "A complete lie." "Geneva, why didn't you tell me this was happening?" Ruthie asked. "Why didn't you defend yourself when Raymond called me?" "Because I didn't know Raymond had called you," I said. "I didn't know my children were going around to everyone preemptively telling lies about me. I thought maybe I really had done something wrong and just didn't see it. But after reading through all these messages and emails last night, I realized they've rewritten history. They've taken normal, loving interactions and twisted them into evidence of abuse." "The screenshots you sent," Ruthie said. "These text messages from Raymond asking for marriage advice. Geneva, you weren't interfering. He literally asked for your opinion." "I know," I said. "But somehow, giving him the advice he asked for became trying to break up his marriage." "And Minnie," Ruthie continued, "these emails where she's begging you to take Opal for the weekend because she needs a break, that's not you overstepping. That's you being a helpful grandmother." "That's what I thought too," I said, "but apparently I was wrong." "You weren't wrong," Ruthie said firmly. "Geneva, I owe you an apology. When Raymond called me, I believed him. I thought you must be going through something. Maybe grief from Porter's death was finally catching up with you, making you act differently. I didn't question his story because why would your own children lie about something like this?" "I've been asking myself the same question," I admitted. The second call came from my late husband's brother, Curtis. "Geneva, what the hell is going on? I just read your email and I'm furious." "Curtis, did my children talk to you?" I asked. "Theodore called me last month," Curtis said. "He told me you'd become difficult in your old age, that you were making unreasonable demands on them, guilt-tripping them constantly, refusing to accept boundaries. He said they were worried about your mental health, but that you refused to get help." "And you believed him?" I asked, hurt. "Geneva, he's Porter's son," Curtis said. "He was crying on the phone. He said, 'I just want my mom back, the mom we had before she became like this.' What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to call me and ask my side of the story," I said quietly. There was a long pause. "You're right," Curtis finally said. "I should have. Geneva, I'm sorry. But in my defense, the way Theodore described it, it sounded exactly like what happened with my mother before she developed dementia. The paranoia, the accusations, the inability to accept she was wrong about things. I thought maybe you were going through something similar." "I'm not developing dementia," I said firmly. "I'm being systematically gaslit by my own children." "I can see that now," Curtis said. "These text messages you've included, Geneva, Theodore told me you refused to help him when he was about to be evicted. But you sent him $4,000. He lied to my face." "He lied to everyone," I said. "And they made sure to tell everyone their lies before I even knew what was happening, so that when I tried to defend myself, people would think I was just being defensive and manipulative." "That's calculated," Curtis observed. "That's not just misunderstanding or miscommunication. That's deliberate." "I know," I said. The The third call came from Opal Green, a family friend who'd known my children since they were small. Geneva, I'm shaking. I just finished reading your email. This whole time. Oh my God, this whole time we thought. What did they tell you? I asked. Minnie called me 6 months ago, Opal said. She said you'd been showing signs of mental decline, memory problems, confusion, irrational behavior. She said you'd accused her of stealing from you when she'd just borrowed a dish and forgotten to return it. She said you were becoming paranoid and that they were worried you might need to be in assisted living soon. I never accused Minnie of stealing, I said, and I have no memory problems. Opal, I'm 67 years old, not 97. I know that now, Opal said, but the way Minnie described it was so convincing. She cried, Geneva. She said it was breaking her heart to watch you decline like this. She said they were trying to get you help, but that you refused because you couldn't see that anything was wrong. That's all fabricated, I said. All of it. The screenshots prove it, Opal said. Geneva, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't call you to check on you myself. I just assumed Minnie was telling the truth because who makes up stories about their own mother having dementia? Someone who wants to discredit me before I can defend myself, I said bitterly. Over the next few hours, I received dozens of calls, texts, and emails from family members and friends. Every single one had been contacted by my children in the weeks and months before the intervention, preemptively given a version of events that painted me as mentally unstable, manipulative, or narcissistic. Aunt Geneva, my late husband's sister. Raymond told me you'd been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and that you were threatening to harm yourself if they didn't visit you more often. Geneva, I was so worried about you, but I didn't call because Raymond said that would just reinforce your manipulative behavior. Cousin Theodore, Minnie told me you'd become racist toward her husband Curtis, and that's why she was limiting contact. She said you'd made comments about him being not good enough for the family because of his background. I was so disappointed in you, but looking at your emails, you never said anything like that. She just twisted your normal concerns about them rushing into marriage into something ugly. Neighbor Estelle, Theodore told me you'd started calling him multiple times a day, sometimes in the middle of the night, demanding he come over for emergencies that weren't real emergencies. He said you were using fake crises to manipulate him into visiting. But your phone records show you called him once every couple of weeks during normal hours. Every revelation made me angrier and more heartbroken. My children hadn't just decided I was toxic. They'd orchestrated an entire campaign to destroy my reputation before I even knew I needed to defend it. Around noon, my sister Ruthie called again. Geneva, you need to see this. Your children have a group chat with several family members, cousins, aunts, uncles. Someone just added me to it because they thought I should see what's being said. What's being said? I asked, dreading the answer. Raymond just sent a message. As expected, our mother is playing the victim and sending manipulative emails to everyone trying to make us look like the bad guys. This is exactly what our therapist warned us would happen. Please don't respond to her emails. She's just trying to triangulate and divide the family. We love our mother, but we have to protect ourselves from her toxic behavior. I felt like I'd been punched. Even after I'd provided evidence, my children were still trying to control the narrative. What are people saying? I asked. That's the thing, Ruthie said. People aren't responding the way Raymond expected. Uncle Curtis wrote, I don't know what's going on, but Geneva's email included actual screenshots of text messages and emails. Those aren't manipulated. Those are your actual words. Can you explain why you told me she refused to help Theodore financially when she clearly sent him $4,000? What did Raymond say? I asked. He hasn't responded yet, Ruthie said. But Minnie jumped in. She wrote, the screenshots are real but taken out of context. Our mother is very good at making herself look like the victim by only showing parts of conversations. There's so much more to the story that she's leaving out. If there's more to the story, why don't they show it? I said. If I'm taking things out of context, they could easily send the full conversations to prove it. Exactly, Ruthie said. That's what Cousin Opal just wrote. She said, If Geneva is taking things out of context, please share the full context so we can understand what really happened. We all just want the truth. And, I prompted. Raymond wrote, "We're not going to engage in this back and forth. We've said what we needed to say. If people choose to believe our mother's manipulation over our lived experience, that's their choice. But we're done explaining ourselves." I sat there absorbing that. My children's strategy was falling apart. They'd expected everyone to automatically take their side because they'd gotten there first. They hadn't counted on me having evidence. And now that the evidence contradicted their story, they were refusing to engage, which only made them look more guilty. That afternoon, I did something I'd been thinking about since the intervention. I called Dr. Opal Martinez, the therapist my children had been seeing. "Dr. Martinez, this is Geneva, Washington. We met once for a joint session with my children about a year ago." "Yes, Mrs. Washington, I remember," Dr. Martinez said cautiously. "How can I help you?" "I need to understand something," I said. "My children told me, and apparently told many family members, that you diagnosed me with narcissistic personality disorder. Is that true?" There was a pause. "Mrs. Washington, I can't discuss what was said in therapy sessions with your children. That's confidential." "I'm not asking you to violate confidentiality," I said. "I'm asking a simple yes or no question. Did you diagnose me with narcissistic personality disorder?" Another pause. "Mrs. Washington, I've never formally evaluated you. I met you once for a single joint session where you walked out after about 20 minutes. I cannot diagnose someone with a personality disorder based on a 20-minute interaction, nor would it be ethical to do so." "So you never told my children I have narcissistic personality disorder?" I pressed. "What I discussed with your children in private sessions is confidential," Dr. Martinez repeated. "But I can tell you that I would never diagnose someone I haven't properly evaluated. If your children claimed I gave you a formal diagnosis, that's inaccurate." "So they lied," I said flatly. "Mrs. Washington, I think there may be some miscommunication happening," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "Sometimes in therapy, we discuss patterns of behavior that are consistent with certain disorders without making a formal diagnosis. It's possible your children misunderstood or mischaracterized those discussions. Or they deliberately lied to make me look mentally ill," I said. Dr. Martinez sighed. "Mrs. Washington, I can't speak to your children's motivations. What I can say is that family dynamics are complex, and often everyone involved genuinely believes their own perception of events is the truth. It's possible your children aren't lying in the sense that they believe what they're saying. People can convince themselves of narratives that serve their emotional needs." "Even when those narratives are contradicted by evidence?" I asked. "Evidence can be interpreted different ways," Dr. Martinez said. "A text message that seems supportive to you might have felt manipulative to them based on the emotional context you're not seeing." "So there's nothing I can say or do to prove I'm not a narcissist?" I asked, frustrated. "Mrs. Washington, the question isn't whether you can prove you're not a narcissist," Dr. Martinez said. "The question is whether you and your children can find a way to communicate that works for everyone. That might require you to accept that their perception of your behavior is different from your intention, even if you don't agree with their perception." I hung up feeling more confused than ever. Was Dr. Martinez right? Was this all just a misunderstanding based on different perceptions? Or were my children deliberately lying to justify cutting me out of their lives? That evening, Ruthie called again. "Geneva, the family wants to have a meeting. Everyone who received your email and Raymond's response. They want to hear from both sides and figure out what's really going on." "Will my children be there?" I asked. "They've been invited," Ruthie said. "Whether they'll come is another question." The meeting was scheduled for the next evening at Ruthie's house. I spent the entire next day preparing, printing out more evidence, organizing timelines, trying to anticipate every possible accusation my children might make. When I arrived at Ruthie's house, the living room was packed with family members. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my late husband's siblings, family friends. About 20 people in total. My 3 children sat together on one couch, united as always. Estelle, Curtis, and Theodore's girlfriend Minnie sat behind them, offering support. "Thank you all for coming," Ruthie began. "We're here because there's clearly been a serious breakdown in communication in this family. Geneva and her children have very different understandings of what's been happening. We thought it might help to have a conversation where everyone can share their perspective." "Before we start," Raymond interrupted, "I want to be clear that we only came because we were told this was mandatory if we wanted to remain part of this family. We've already said everything we need to say. Our mother is manipulative and toxic, and no amount of evidence she presents will change our lived experience." "Raymond, that's exactly the problem," Uncle Curtis said. "You keep talking about your lived experience, but refusing to explain why your lived experience contradicts the documented evidence your mother has provided. If Geneva is taking things out of context, show us the full context." "We don't have to prove anything to you," Minnie said. "You weren't there. You don't know what it was like growing up with her. You don't know the subtle ways she manipulated us." "Then tell us," Cousin Opal said. "Help us understand. Because from the outside, it looks like Geneva was a single mother who worked herself to the bone to support you, and now you're accusing her of abuse for what exactly?" "For making us feel guilty about everything," Theodore said. "For holding her sacrifices over our heads. For making us feel like we owed her our entire lives because she chose to have us and raise us." "Can you give a specific example?" Aunt Geneva asked. Theodore looked at his siblings. Minnie jumped in. "How about when I got married? Mom didn't approve of Curtis, and she made sure to let me know in 1,000 subtle ways. She suggested we slow down. She suggested premarital counseling, which is basically saying she thought our marriage would fail. She made comments about how hard marriage is. On my wedding day, she pulled me aside to express concerns instead of just being happy for me." I took a deep breath. "Minnie, can I respond to that?" "Here we go," Raymond muttered. "Minnie, you and Curtis got engaged after dating for 6 months, I said calmly. "You were 29 years old. I didn't disapprove of Curtis. I barely knew him. What I said was that 6 months isn't very long to know someone before making a lifetime commitment. I suggested premarital counseling because I think it's a good idea for any couple, not because I thought your marriage would fail. And I never pulled you aside on your wedding day to express concerns. You came to me upset because Curtis made a joke in his speech about me having doubts, and I tried to explain that I'd never said anything negative about him." "That's your version," Minnie said. "My version is that you couldn't stand that I was getting married and leaving you." "Do you have any evidence of that?" Ruthie asked Minnie. "Any text messages or emails where Geneva said she didn't want you to get married?" "It wasn't about what she said," Minnie insisted. "It was her tone, her body language, the way she'd sigh or pause before saying she was happy for me. You can't document manipulation like that." "So your accusation is based entirely on how you interpreted Geneva's tone?" Uncle Curtis said skeptically. "Yes," Minnie said. "That's how emotional abuse works. It's subtle. It's not like she hit us or called us names. She just made us feel bad in ways we couldn't quite explain." "But if you can't explain it, and you can't provide evidence, and Geneva's documented evidence contradicts your claims," Cousin Opal said, "how are we supposed to know what's true?" "You're supposed to believe us because we're the victims," Raymond said, his voice rising. "You're supposed to take our side." "We're not taking sides," Ruthie said firmly. "We're trying to understand what happened. And right now, it seems like you're asking us to accept that Geneva is an abuser based on feelings and interpretations that you can't substantiate, while dismissing the actual evidence she's provided." "The evidence doesn't matter," Theodore shouted. "Our feelings matter, our experience matters. Why is that so hard for everyone to understand?" "Your feelings do matter," I said quietly. "If I've done things that hurt you, I want to know what they are so I can apologize and do better. But Theodore, you told me I refused to help you when you were facing eviction. I have bank statements showing I sent you $4,000. That's not a feeling or an interpretation. That's a factual lie." "I said you refused to keep helping me," Theodore said defensively. "I needed more money after that, and you said no." You needed $2,000 for utilities and food 2 months after I'd sent you $4,000, I said. I didn't refuse to help. I said I couldn't afford to keep sending you thousands of dollars because I'm on a fixed income. I offered to help you budget and find a cheaper apartment instead. How is that refusing to help? Because you should have just given me the money without all the lectures about budgeting, Theodore said. So Geneva is abusive because she wouldn't give you unlimited money? Cousin Theodore asked incredulously. The room fell silent. My children looked around at the family members, seeing that people were not reacting the way they'd expected. You're all taking her side, Raymond said bitterly, just like she manipulated you to do. We're not taking anyone's side, Uncle Curtis said. We're looking at the evidence and asking questions. And what's becoming clear is that you three have convinced yourselves of a narrative that doesn't match reality. Our reality is real, Minnie said, tears forming. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. Then help us see it, Aunt Geneva said gently. Show us the texts, the emails, the evidence that supports your version. If Geneva is lying or taking things out of context, prove it. The three of them looked at each other. Finally, Raymond said, We don't have to prove anything to you. This was a mistake. We're leaving. They stood up to go. Wait, I said. Before you leave, I need to ask you something. Why? Why did you do this? Why did you turn me into a villain? What did I do that was so terrible that you felt you needed to destroy me? Raymond turned to look at me. You want to know why? Because we're tired of feeling guilty. We're tired of feeling like we owe you something just because you raised us. We're tired of the obligation. We wanted to be free of you, but we felt too guilty to just cut you off without a reason. So we found a reason. We convinced ourselves you were toxic so we could justify going no contact without feeling like bad people. The honesty of that statement hung in the air. Even Minnie and Theodore looked shocked that Raymond had said it out loud. So this whole thing, the therapy, the diagnosis, the accusations, it was all just to justify abandoning me? I asked, my voice breaking. We didn't abandon you, Minnie said weakly. We set boundaries. No, I said. You demonized me so you wouldn't have to feel guilty about choosing not to be part of my life. And you know what? If you didn't want to be in my life, you could have just said that. You didn't have to destroy my reputation. You didn't have to lie to the entire family. You didn't have to make me question my own sanity. You could have just left. Would you have let us? Raymond challenged. Would you have just accepted us going no contact without making us feel guilty about it? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe I would have been hurt. Maybe I would have asked why. But Raymond, I would have survived. What I don't know if I can survive is this, being turned into a monster by my own children. The three of them left without another word. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Do the children deserve forgiveness? Should Geneva cut them off permanently? Where are you watching from? After my children walked out of the family meeting, the room sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then everyone started talking at once. Did Raymond really just admit they made it all up? Cousin Opal asked, shocked. He said they convinced themselves Geneva was toxic, so they could go no contact without feeling guilty, Uncle Curtis said. That's not making it up, that's worse. That's deliberately rewriting reality to justify what they wanted to do anyway. I can't believe this, Aunt Geneva said, shaking her head. Those children grew up in this family. We all watched Geneva sacrifice everything for them. How could they do this to her? I sat on the couch, feeling numb. Part of me had hoped that confronting my children with evidence would make them see the truth, that they'd realize they'd been wrong and we could rebuild our relationship. Instead, Raymond had essentially admitted that the entire thing, the therapy, the accusations, the intervention, had been a calculated effort to justify abandoning me without feeling like bad people. Geneva, are you okay? Ruthie asked, sitting beside me and putting her arm around my shoulders. I don't know, I admitted. I thought if I could just show them the truth, prove I wasn't the villain they'd made me out to be, everything would be okay. But it doesn't matter. They don't care about the truth. They care about not feeling guilty. That's their problem, not yours, Uncle Curtis said firmly. Geneva, you've done nothing wrong. You were a good mother who made sacrifices any parent would make. Your children decided to repay you by destroying your reputation so they could feel better about cutting you out of their lives. That's on them, not you. But they're my children, I said, tears finally starting to fall. How do I just let them go? Maybe you don't have to let them go, Ruthie said gently. Maybe you just have to let go of the relationship you thought you had and accept the reality of what it actually is. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from Raymond. It had been sent to me, Ruthie, Uncle Curtis, Aunt Geneva, and several other family members who'd been at the meeting. Last night's meeting proved exactly what we've been saying about our mother. She manipulated all of you into taking her side by playing the victim and showing carefully selected evidence that makes her look innocent. What you didn't see were the years of subtle manipulation, the guilt trips, the emotional blackmail. You didn't see how she made us feel like we could never be good enough, like we owed her our entire lives. We stand by everything we've said. Our mother is toxic, and we have every right to protect ourselves by going no contact. If the family wants to side with her, that's your choice. But don't expect us to maintain relationships with people who enable her abusive behavior. We're blocking Mom's number and email. We're also blocking anyone who continues to have a relationship with her. This is a boundary we're setting for our mental health, and we hope you'll respect it. I read the message 3 times, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. They were really doing it, cutting me off completely and forcing the rest of the family to choose sides. My phone rang. It was Ruthie. Did you see Raymond's text? Yes, I said quietly. Geneva, they're trying to isolate you, Ruthie said. That's what abusers do, they cut off their victims from support systems. The fact that they're doing it while accusing you of being the abuser it's almost unbelievable. I don't understand how this happened, I said. How did my children, the Bobbies I gave birth to, the kids I raised, how did they become people who would do this? I don't know, Ruthie admitted. But Geneva, you need to understand something. Most of the family is not going to choose them over you. We all saw the evidence. We all heard Raymond essentially admit they made this up. They're the ones isolating themselves. But some people will choose them, I said. Some people will believe them or will stay neutral to keep the peace. Maybe, Ruthie acknowledged, and you have to decide if you're okay with that. Over the next few days, it became clear that the family was splitting into 3 camps. Camp 1, Team Geneva. This included Ruthie, Uncle Curtis, Aunt Geneva, Cousin Opal, Cousin Theodore, and several others who'd seen the evidence and believed me. They were outraged by what my children had done and made it clear they were standing with me. Camp 2, Team Raymond/Minnie/Theodore. This included my children's spouses, obviously. A couple of cousins who were closer to my children's age and believed their version of events, and one aunt who said, there are always 2 sides to every story, and chose to believe my children's side. Camp 3, Team Switzerland. This included family members who didn't want to get involved, who said this was between Geneva and her kids, or who tried to maintain relationships with both sides. They'd still talk to me but wouldn't speak against my children. The division was painful. Family gatherings became awkward. People felt like they had to choose. Some family members stopped coming to events altogether to avoid the tension. But the most painful part was the realization that some people, even after seeing the evidence, still believed my children's version of events, or at least considered it equally valid. Aunt Estelle called me 1 week after the family meeting. Geneva, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I just want to say, I think you both have valid points. Both, I repeated. Estelle, did you see the evidence I presented? The text messages, the bank statements, the emails. I did, Estelle said. But Geneva, evidence can be interpreted different ways. And I think it's possible that you didn't intend to be manipulative, but your children genuinely felt manipulated. Both things can be true. So you think I manipulated them without meaning to? I asked. I think you're a strong personality, Estelle said carefully. And sometimes strong personalities can be overwhelming for their children without realizing it. I think your children feel genuinely hurt by things you may not have even been aware you were doing. But they lied, Estelle, I said, frustrated. Theodore told people I refused to help him financially. I have bank statements showing I sent him $4,000. That's not a different interpretation. That's a factual lie. Maybe he felt like you refused to help because you didn't give him everything he asked for, Estelle suggested. Maybe to him, giving some but not all felt like a refusal. That's insane, I said. I can't afford to give unlimited money to my adult children. That doesn't make me abusive. I'm not saying you're abusive, Estelle said. I'm just saying I can see both sides, and I think the healthiest thing for everyone is to just let it go. Stop trying to prove who's right and who's wrong. Accept that you have different perspectives and move on. Move on to what? I asked. My children have cut me off. They've blocked me. They're forcing the family to choose sides. I can't just let it go. Maybe you need to accept that your relationship with your children is over, Estelle said. At least for now. Maybe in the future, when everyone has had time to heal, you can try to rebuild. But right now, I think continuing to fight about this is only making things worse. After I hung up, I realized Estelle was right about one thing. The relationship I'd had with my children was over. But it wasn't over because of miscommunication or different perspectives. It was over because my children had deliberately destroyed it and then blamed me for the destruction. 2 weeks after the intervention, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a letter from Minnie. Mom, since you refuse to respect our boundaries and continue to spread lies about us to the family, Curtis and I have made the decision that you will no longer have contact with our children. Opal and Porter, Minnie's 2 kids, ask about you sometimes, and we tell them that Grandma is sick and can't see them right now. We've explained to them that sometimes older people's brains don't work right, and they say and do things that don't make sense. We've told them that you love them, but that you're not well enough to be around them safely. This isn't to punish you, it's to protect our children from your manipulation. We won't allow you to do to them what you did to us. If you want a relationship with your grandchildren in the future, you need to acknowledge that you have a problem, get professional help, and make genuine changes. Until then, we need to protect them from you. Minnie. I read the letter over and over, unable to believe what I was seeing. My grandchildren, Opal, 7, and Porter, 5, were being told I was mentally ill. They were being told I couldn't see them because my brain didn't work right. My children weren't just cutting me off. They were preemptively turning my grandchildren against me so that even if we ever reconciled, my relationship with my grandkids would be poisoned. I called Ruthie, crying so hard I could barely speak. They're telling the kids I'm sick. They're telling them my brain doesn't work right. Oh, Geneva, Ruthie said softly. That's beyond cruel. Opal is 7 years old, I sobbed. She doesn't understand what's happening. She's going to grow up thinking her grandmother is crazy, and Porter, he's only 5. He'll barely remember me. I'm so sorry, Ruthie said. Geneva, I wish I knew what to say, but maybe it's time to accept that you can't control what your children tell their kids. All you can control is whether you're here if and when those kids come looking for the truth someday. What if they never do? I asked. What if Minnie and Raymond and Theodore are so successful in their lives that the grandkids never question it? Then at least you'll know you told the truth to everyone else, Ruthie said. Geneva, you've done everything you can do. You've provided evidence. You've given your side of the story. You've proven to anyone willing to look objectively that your children's accusations don't hold up. Now you have to let go and focus on your own healing. I'd resisted the idea of therapy because my children had weaponized it against me. But after Minnie's letter about the grandchildren, I realized I needed help processing everything that had happened. I found a therapist named Dr. Porter Stevens who specialized in family estrangement. In our first session, I told him the entire story, the intervention, the accusations, the evidence, the family meeting, everything. Mrs. Washington, let me start by saying something very clearly, Dr. Stevens said. Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've shown me, I don't believe you have narcissistic personality disorder or any other personality disorder. What I see is a woman who made normal parenting decisions that her adult children have reframed as abuse to justify cutting her off. I felt tears of relief. Really? You don't think I'm a narcissist? No, Dr. Stevens said firmly. Do you know what actual narcissistic parents do? They deny their children's feelings. They refuse to take any responsibility for mistakes. They can't apologize. They make everything about them. Mrs. Washington, you've spent this entire session trying to understand what you did wrong and how you could have been a better mother. That's not narcissism. That's the opposite of narcissism. But my children say I always play the victim, I said. They say I make everything about me. Mrs. Washington, your children have accused you of being manipulative and abusive, Dr. Stevens said. Is it making everything about you to defend yourself against false accusations? Is it playing the victim to point out that you're being hurt? I don't know, I admitted. That's because your children have engaged in what we call DARVO, Dr. Stevens explained. It stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. They denied that their accusations were false. They attacked you for defending yourself, and they reversed who the victim was, making themselves the victims of your defense. Why would they do that? I asked. Based on what you've told me, I think your children wanted to go no contact with you, Dr. Stevens said. But they felt guilty about it. So they created a narrative where you were toxic and they were victims, which allowed them to cut you off without feeling like bad people. When you challenged that narrative with evidence, they had to double down, because admitting they were wrong would mean admitting they'd hurt you for no good reason. So what do? I asked. You accept that you can't change their minds, Dr. Stevens said. You accept that they've chosen this path and there's nothing you can do to fix it. And then you focus on healing yourself and building a life that doesn't revolve around trying to prove you're a good person to people who are determined to believe you're not. That night, I wrote a letter to my children. I knew they'd blocked me and would never read it, but Dr. Stevens had suggested writing it anyway as a way to process my feelings. Dear Raymond, Minnie, and Theodore, I've spent the past month trying to understand what I did that was so terrible you felt the need to destroy me. I've read through years of text messages and emails, looking for evidence of the manipulation you accuse me of, and I've come to a realization. I wasn't a perfect mother. I made mistakes. I probably held on a little too tight sometimes. I probably gave unwanted advice sometimes. I probably made you feel obligated to spend time with me sometimes. But those aren't abuse. Those are normal flaws that most parents have. And the fact that you've taken those normal flaws and reframed them as narcissistic abuse is deeply unfair. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to support you after your father died. I paid for your college educations. I sent money when you were struggling. I babysat your kids. I showed up for every important moment in your lives. I loved you with everything I had. And you've repaid me by telling the family I'm mentally ill, by turning your children against me, by forcing people to choose between you and me, by blocking me so I can't even try to defend myself. I want you to know something. I forgive you, not because what you've done is okay. It's not. But because holding on to anger will only hurt me, not you. You've made it clear you're not interested in my forgiveness anyway. But I also want you to know, I won't forget. I won't pretend this didn't happen. I won't sweep it under the rug for the sake of family peace. You destroyed something precious, our relationship, and you did it deliberately and systematically. Maybe someday you'll realize what you've done. Maybe someday you'll feel guilty about it. Maybe someday you'll want to apologize. If that day comes, I don't know if I'll be ready to rebuild. Because right now, I don't recognize you as the children I raised. The children I raised were kind and grateful and honest. The adults you've become are none of those things. I hope you find peace with your decision. I hope your children grow up happy and loved. I hope you never experience what you've put me through, the pain of being betrayed by the people you love most. And I hope that one day, when your own children are grown, they treat you better than you've treated me. Your mother, Geneva. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't send it. Maybe I never would. But writing it helped me realize something important. I'd done everything I could do. I'd provided evidence. I'd told the truth. I'd defended myself. Now I had to let go and accept that my children had made their choice, and nothing I did would change it. 3 months after the intervention, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw that my niece, Ruthie's daughter, had shared a post from Raymond. Curious, I clicked on it. What I saw made my blood run cold. Raymond had written a long Facebook post about dealing with a narcissistic parent. He didn't name me directly, but it was clearly about me. For those who don't know, my siblings and I recently made the difficult decision to go no contact with our mother. She has narcissistic personality disorder, and after years of manipulation, guilt-tripping, and emotional abuse, we finally had to cut her off for our own mental health. The hardest part has been dealing with family members who don't understand. Our mother has spent months spreading lies about us, trying to turn the family against us, playing the victim like narcissists always do. But we know our truth. We know what we lived through. And we're not going back to that toxic environment, no matter how many family members our mother manipulates into feeling sorry for her. If you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, please know, you're not alone. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to go no contact. Don't let anyone guilt you into maintaining a relationship that's hurting you. The post had over 200 likes and dozens of comments from Raymond's friends supporting him for being brave enough to cut off toxic family. People who'd never met me were congratulating my son for protecting himself from my abuse. I felt sick. This was no longer just about our family. Raymond had taken our private family conflict and made it public, painting himself as a victim of abuse to an audience of hundreds. I called Ruthie. "Did you see Raymond's Facebook post?" "Yes," Ruthie said grimly. "I reported it to Facebook for harassment, but I doubt they'll do anything." "He's telling the whole internet I'm a narcissist," I said. "People are congratulating him for cutting me off. They think I'm abusive." "Geneva, those people don't know you," Ruthie said. "They only know Raymond's version of the story." "Should I respond?" I asked. "Should I make my own post with the evidence?" "I don't think so," Ruthie said. "If you respond publicly, it'll just make it look like you're the one who can't let go. Raymond wants you to engage. It'll prove his point about you being manipulative and unable to accept boundaries." "So I just let people believe I'm a monster?" I asked. "You let the people who matter, the people who actually know you, see the truth," Ruthie said. "You've already done that. The rest doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered that strangers on the internet were praising my son for cutting off his abusive mother. It mattered that he was using the language of abuse survivors to describe a relationship where he was actually the one causing harm. It mattered because every comment, every like, every share reinforced in Raymond's mind that he was the victim and I was the villain. 2 weeks after Raymond's Facebook post, I hit my breaking point. I'd been to the grocery store, something I used to do without thinking. But now, I found myself looking over my shoulder, afraid I'd run into one of my children or their friends. Afraid someone would recognize me as the abusive mother from Raymond's post. I was standing in the checkout line when I heard a woman behind me whisper to her friend, "That's her. That's the woman whose kids cut her off." I turned around. I didn't recognize the woman, but she clearly recognized me. "Excuse me," I said. The woman looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for you to hear that. I'm friends with your daughter-in-law Estelle on Facebook. I saw your son's post about the situation." "And you believe him?" I asked. I mean, I don't know you," the woman said awkwardly. "But it must be hard, whatever happened." "Do you want to know what really happened?" I asked, my voice rising. "My son wanted to cut me off because he felt guilty about not wanting a relationship with me. So he convinced himself and his siblings that I was abusive. He lied to the entire family. He told people I was mentally ill. He's poisoned my grandchildren against me. And now he's posting about it on Facebook so strangers like you can congratulate him for protecting himself from his terrible mother." The woman looked uncomfortable. I'm sure it's more complicated than... It's not, I interrupted. I have evidence. Text messages, emails, bank statements. I can prove everything I'm saying. But it doesn't matter because people like you will always believe the victim narrative. It's easier to believe my son is a brave survivor than to believe he's a liar who destroyed his mother's reputation to justify his own guilt. Ma'am, I think you need to calm down, the cashier said nervously. I realized I was crying, and that everyone in the checkout area was staring at me. I'm sorry, I said, abandoning my groceries and leaving the store. I sat in my car and cried for 20 minutes. This was what my children had done to me, turned me into someone who had public breakdowns in grocery stores, who was afraid to leave her house, who jumped at shadows. When I got home, I called Dr. Stevens. I can't do this anymore. I can't live in a town where people think I'm an abuser. I can't go to the grocery store without being recognized. I can't handle this. Geneva, what you're experiencing is completely normal, Dr. Stevens said. You're grieving, you're traumatized. You're dealing with a level of betrayal most people never experience. It's okay to not be okay. But I don't know how to move forward, I said. How do I build a life when my own children have destroyed my reputation? You start small, Dr. Stevens said. You focus on the people who do believe you. You do things that make you feel good. You give yourself time to heal. And you remember that your children's lies don't define you. The truth defines you, and the people who matter know the truth. Before I continue, kindly subscribe now. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Should Geneva move away to start fresh? Will the grandchildren ever know the truth? Where are you watching from? 6 months after the intervention, I made a decision that changed everything. I was moving away. I'd lived in the same town for 40 years, raised my children there, buried my husband there, built a life there. But that town had become a prison. Everywhere I went, I saw memories of my children. Every grocery store, every park, every street corner reminded me of what I'd lost. And worse, there were people who'd seen Raymond's Facebook post. People who whispered about me. People who looked at me with pity or suspicion. I couldn't heal in a place where I was constantly reminded of how my children had destroyed me. So I decided to move to a city 2 hours away where my sister Ruthie lived. I put my house on the market, started packing up 40 years of memories, and prepared to start over at 67 years old. The day before the movers came, I walked through my empty house one last time. This was the house where I'd raised Raymond, Minnie, and Theodore. The house where Porter and I had built our life together before he died. Every room held memories. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents. The kitchen where I'd taught the kids to bake cookies. The bedrooms where I'd tuck them in at night and read them stories. I stood in Raymond's old room, now empty except for some boxes, and remembered the little boy he used to be. The boy who would run to me crying when he scraped his knee. The boy who said, "I love you, Mommy," every night before bed. That boy had grown into a man who told the internet his mother was a narcissist. A man who blocked her number. A man who poisoned his own children against their grandmother. I didn't know that man. I didn't recognize him as the child I'd raised. As I locked the door of my house for the last time, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for everything I was leaving behind. Relief that I was finally escaping the prison my children had built around me. Moving to a new city at 67 was harder than I'd expected. Everything was unfamiliar. I didn't know where the good grocery store was, which coffee shop had the best coffee, which streets to avoid during rush hour. But there was also freedom in the unfamiliarity. In this city, nobody knew me as that woman whose kids cut her off. Nobody had seen Raymond's Facebook post. Nobody whispered about me in checkout lines. I was just Geneva, a retired woman starting a new chapter of her life. Ruthie helped me settle in. She took me around the city, showing me her favorite places. She introduced me to her friends, her book club, her church. Slowly, I started building a new life. I joined a grief support group for parents estranged from their adult children. I was shocked to discover how many people were dealing with similar situations. Parents who'd been cut off by their kids, often with little or no explanation. Parents who'd been accused of abuse they didn't commit. Parents who'd been turned into villains in their children's narratives. In that support group, I met Opal, a 72-year-old woman whose son had cut her off 5 years earlier after his wife convinced him that Opal was toxic. I met Curtis, a 68-year-old man whose daughter had gone no contact after joining an online support group for adult children of narcissists and deciding her father fit the profile. I met Minnie, a 70-year-old woman whose 3 children had cut her off simultaneously after attending family therapy together. The therapist told them I was an enmeshed parent, Minnie explained during one group session. I didn't even know what that meant. Apparently it means I was too involved in their lives, but I thought being involved was what good parents did. The goalposts keep moving, Curtis observed. When we were raising our kids, we were told to be involved, to sacrifice, to put them first. Now they're adults and we're being told that everything we did was toxic. We can't win. It's not about winning, our group leader, a therapist named Dr. Theodore Green, said gently. It's about accepting that your adult children get to define their own experience, even if that experience doesn't match your reality. And it's about healing from the pain of that rejection, regardless of whether you think it's fair. But it's not fair, I said. My children lied about me. They told people I was mentally ill. They've poisoned my grandchildren against me. How am I supposed to just accept that? You're not accepting that what they did was okay, Dr. Green clarified. You're accepting that it happened and that you can't change it. There's a difference. Over the weeks and months in that support group, I slowly started to let go of the need to prove I was right and my children were wrong. Not because I'd stopped believing I was right. I knew I was right. But because fighting to prove it was keeping me stuck in the past. 8 months after I'd moved, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Normally, I didn't answer unknown numbers, but something made me pick up. Hello. Grandma Geneva, a small voice said. My heart stopped. Opal, is that you? Yes, my 7-year-old granddaughter said. I'm calling from Mommy's phone. She doesn't know. Sweetheart, where's your mommy? I asked, trying to stay calm. She's in the shower, Opal said. Grandma, why don't you see me anymore? Mommy said you were sick and couldn't see me. But I heard her talking to Daddy, and she said you moved away. If you moved away, that means you're not sick, right? I felt tears forming. My 7-year-old granddaughter had figured out that something didn't add up in the story her parents were telling her. Opal, this is complicated, I said carefully. Your mommy and I had a disagreement, and she decided it was better if you and I didn't see each other for a while. Did you have a fight? Opal asked. Something like that, I said. Well, can you say you're sorry so we can see each other again? Opal asked with the simple logic of a child. That's what Mommy makes me do when I fight with Porter. I have to say sorry and then we can play again. I wish it were that simple, sweetheart, I said. But sometimes grown-up disagreements are more complicated than that. I miss you, Grandma, Opal said, and I could hear her voice breaking. I don't understand why you can't come to my birthday party. I'm turning 8 next month and I want you there. I miss you too, baby, I said, tears streaming down my face. I miss you so much. Can you come to my party? Opal asked hopefully. Please, it's not the same without you. Sweetheart, your mommy would have to invite me, I said, and I don't think she's going to do that. Why not? Opal asked, frustrated. Why is Mommy being mean? You're my grandma, you should be at my birthday. I heard a voice in the background, Minnie, calling for Opal. I have to go, Opal whispered. Mommy's done with her shower, but Grandma, I'm going to ask Mommy if you can come to my party, and if she says yes, will you come? Of course I will, sweetheart, I said. I love you so much. I love you too, Grandma, Opal said, and then the line went dead. I sat holding the phone, crying. My granddaughter missed me. She wanted me at her birthday party. She didn't believe the story her parents were telling her about why I wasn't in her life. But I also knew what would happen next. Minnie would discover that Opal had called me. She'd be furious. She'd probably take away Opal's phone privileges, and she'd definitely not invite me to the birthday party. I was right. An hour after Opal's call, I received a text from Minnie, from a number I didn't have blocked because I'd never had it before. It must have been Curtis's phone. I don't know how you got Opal to call you, but that was completely inappropriate. You are not to contact my children. If you try to reach out to them again, I will file for a restraining order. This is harassment, and it needs to stop. I wanted to respond. I wanted to tell Minnie that I hadn't gotten Opal to call me. Opal had called on her own because she missed her grandmother and didn't understand why we couldn't see each other. But I knew responding would only make things worse, so I didn't reply. Instead, I called Dr. Stevens, my therapist. Opal called me, I told him, and then explained what had happened. How do you feel about it? Dr. Stevens asked. Heartbroken, I admitted, because I got to talk to my granddaughter for 5 minutes and it reminded me of everything I've lost, but also hopeful, because Opal doesn't believe her parents' story. She's questioning it. She misses me. And that's important, Dr. Stevens said. Geneva, your children can control the narrative now while your grandchildren are young, but those kids will grow up. They'll start asking questions. They'll want to know their grandmother's side of the story, and when that day comes, you need to be here. What if that day never comes? I asked. Then at least you'll know you were here in case it did. Dr. Stevens said, but Geneva, I think it will come. 7-year-olds don't make secret phone calls to grandparents they barely know. Opal called because she has a relationship with you that her parents can't erase with lies. That relationship will persist, and someday she'll come looking for answers. 1 year after the intervention, my niece, Ruthie's daughter Geneva, got married. She'd stayed firmly in Team Geneva throughout the family split, and she made it clear that I was invited to her wedding. I don't care if Uncle Raymond and Aunt Minnie and Uncle Theodore don't come, Geneva told me. You're my aunt. You've been there for me my whole life, and I want you at my wedding. The wedding was back in my old town, the place I'd left to escape. I almost didn't go. The thought of seeing my children there, or worse, seeing people who'd read Raymond's Facebook post, made me anxious. But Ruthie convinced me. Geneva, you can't let them control your life forever. You have every right to be at this wedding, and if your children have a problem with it, they can leave. So I went. The wedding was beautiful. Geneva looked radiant. And for most of the reception, I felt happy, dancing with Ruthie, talking to family members who'd supported me, celebrating my niece's special day. But then I saw them, Raymond, Minnie, and Theodore, standing together near the bar. They'd come after all. Raymond saw me first. He said something to his siblings, and all 3 of them turned to look at me. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the crowded reception hall. Then Minnie walked over to me. Mom, we need to talk, Minnie said. I don't think that's a good idea, I said quietly. You made it clear a year ago that you wanted nothing to do with me. That was before Opal started asking questions we can't answer, Minnie said. So that's what this was about. Not an apology, not a recognition that they'd been wrong, just a problem they needed to solve. What kind of questions? I asked. She wants to know why you're not in our lives, Minnie said. She doesn't believe us when we say you're sick. She thinks we're lying to her. And now Raymond's kids are starting to ask questions too. Maybe you should try telling them the truth, I suggested. The truth is that you're toxic and we had to cut you off, Minnie said defensively. No, the truth is that you wanted to go no contact with me but felt guilty about it. So you convinced yourselves I was abusive to justify it, I said calmly. Your brother Raymond admitted as much at the family meeting a year ago. That's not, Minnie started, but I held up my hand. I'm not doing this, Minnie, I said. I'm not going to stand here at my niece's wedding and relitigate this with you. You made your decision. You've spent a year telling everyone I'm a narcissist. You've poisoned your children against me. You've destroyed my reputation. And now you're upset because your 7-year-old daughter is smart enough to see through your lies. She's not smart enough, Minnie said, and I was startled by the admission. She's too young to understand complex family dynamics. She just knows she misses her grandma and doesn't understand why you're not around anymore. And whose fault is that? I asked. Yours, Minnie said automatically. If you just respected our boundaries. I did respect your boundaries, I interrupted. I haven't called you, I haven't texted you, I haven't shown up at your house. I moved to a different city to give you space. What more do you want from me? I want you to admit that you were wrong, Minnie said. I want you to acknowledge that your behavior was manipulative and controlling. I want you to apologize so we can tell our kids that Grandma recognized she had a problem and is working on it. You want me to lie, I said flatly. You want me to confess to abuse I didn't commit so you can maintain your narrative to your children. It's not a lie if you believe it, Minnie said. But I don't believe it, I said. Minnie, I've spent the past year in therapy. I've examined every interaction I had with you kids. I've looked at the evidence. And I know, not think, but know, that I was a good mother who made normal parenting mistakes. I was not abusive. I was not manipulative. I was not narcissistic. And I'm not going to say I was just to make it easier for you to explain to your daughter why you cut me off. Then we have nothing more to talk about, Minnie said coldly. She started to walk away, then turned back. And Mom, you need to stay away from my kids. If Opal tries to contact you again, don't respond. Don't answer her calls. Don't reply to her messages. If you do, I will file for a restraining order. You can't get a restraining order against me for talking to my own granddaughter when she calls me, I said. Watch me, Minnie said and walked away. I stood there shaking. Ruthie appeared at my side. I saw Minnie talking to you. Are you okay? No, I admitted. She wants me to confess to being abusive so she can explain to Opal why I'm not in their lives. And when I refused, she threatened to get a restraining order if I talked to Opal again. She can't do that, Ruthie said. Opal is the one initiating contact. It doesn't matter, I said tiredly. She'll find a way to use it against me. She'll say I'm harassing them or trying to manipulate the children. That's what she's been doing all along, twisting normal interactions into evidence of abuse. I'm sorry, Geneva, Ruthie said. I'm so sorry my brother raised children who would do this to you. They're not your fault, I said. But Ruthie, I think I need to accept something. My children are never going to admit they were wrong. They're never going to apologize. They're never going to let me have a relationship with my grandchildren. This is just how it is now. Maybe, Ruthie said. But Geneva, those grandkids are going to grow up. And when they do, they're going to have questions their parents can't answer. And they're going to come looking for you. You just have to be here when they do. 2 years after the intervention, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Raymond. I almost threw it away without reading it. I'd spent 2 years healing, building a new life, learning to live with the estrangement. I didn't want to reopen old wounds. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened the letter. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I needed to write it anyway. My marriage is falling apart. Estelle and I have been in counseling for 6 months, and our therapist asked us to examine patterns in our relationships, not just with each other, but with our families. And I've been forced to look at what happened with you, really look at it, not just accept the narrative we created. Mom, I owe you an apology. Not because our therapist told me to apologize. She actually said I shouldn't reach out to you unless I was genuinely sorry. But because I've realized over the past few months that what we did to you was wrong. We didn't just set boundaries. We didn't just go no contact. We destroyed you. We told the family you were mentally ill. We told our children their grandmother's brain didn't work right. We lied about you to justify our own guilt about not wanting you in our lives. And the worst part is, we convinced ourselves it was true. We took every normal parenting mistake you made and reframed it as abuse. We went to therapy looking for validation that you were toxic, and we found a therapist who gave us that validation without ever really meeting you. I'm not making excuses. What we did was calculated and cruel, and I'm sorry. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not even asking to rebuild our relationship because I know I destroyed it beyond repair. I'm just saying I was wrong. You were a good mother who worked herself to the bone for us, and we repaid you by making you into a villain. I don't know if Minnie and Theodore will ever realize what we did. Right now, they're still convinced we were right, but I can't keep lying to myself anymore. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. Raymond. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me felt vindicated. Raymond was finally admitting what I'd known all along. Part of me felt angry. It had taken him 2 years and his own marriage falling apart to realize what he'd done to me. And part of me just felt sad, because an apology couldn't undo the past 2 years of pain. I called Dr. Stevens. Raymond sent me a letter, an apology letter. "How do you feel about that?" Dr. Stevens asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's what I wanted to hear 2 years ago, but now, I don't know if it changes anything." "Do you want to respond?" Dr. Stevens asked. "I don't know that either," I said. It took me 2 weeks to decide what to do. I talked to Ruthie, to Dr. Stevens, to my support group. I wrote a dozen different responses and threw them all away. Finally, I sent a short email to the address Raymond had included in his letter. "Raymond, I received your letter. Thank you for the apology. It means something to know that you've recognized what you did was wrong. But I need you to understand, an apology doesn't undo the damage. You didn't just hurt me by cutting me off. You destroyed my reputation. You poisoned your children against me. You put me through 2 years of hell where I questioned my own sanity and worth as a mother. I've spent 2 years rebuilding my life. I've moved to a new city. I've made new friends. I've learned to live without you and your siblings, and I've accepted that the relationship we had is gone forever. I don't know if I can forgive you, maybe someday, but right now, I'm not ready to have you back in my life, even if you've realized you were wrong. If you've genuinely changed, that's good. Maybe it will help your marriage. Maybe it will help you be a better father to your kids, but it doesn't change what you did to me. I hope you find peace with what you've done, and I hope you never put another person through what you put me through. Geneva." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I'm now 69 years old, 2 years after my children turned me into the family villain, and 2 years after I told the whole truth. Here's what I've learned. Lesson 1, you can't control other people's narratives about you. My children decided I was toxic, and no amount of evidence could change their minds when they were determined to believe it. I spent months trying to prove I wasn't the villain they'd made me out to be. But the only people who believed me were the ones who wanted to see the truth. The others were always going to believe my children's version. Lesson 2, sometimes the people you love most will hurt you the worst. I gave everything to my children. I sacrificed my entire adult life for them, and they repaid me by destroying me. That's a pain you never fully recover from. You just learn to live with it. Lesson 3, healing isn't about getting justice or validation. For a long time, I thought I'd only heal if my children admitted they were wrong and apologized. But healing actually came from accepting that I might never get that apology, though eventually Raymond did apologize, and building a life anyway. Lesson 4, estrangement from adult children is more common than people talk about. Joining that support group showed me I wasn't alone. There are thousands of parents dealing with estrangement, often for reasons that don't make sense to outside observers. It's a hidden epidemic that no one talks about because parents are afraid of being judged. Lesson 5, your value isn't determined by your children's opinion of you. For decades, being a mother was my entire identity. When my children rejected me, I felt like I had no value. But I've learned that I'm more than just someone's mother. I'm Geneva, a person with my own interests, friendships, and worth. 2 years after the intervention, I'm living in the city near Ruthie. I've made friends in my support group, my book club, my church. I volunteer at a local senior center. I take painting classes. I travel when I can afford it. I think about my children every day. I wonder how they're doing. I wonder if Minnie and Theodore will ever have their own realization like Raymond did. I wonder what my grandchildren are being told about me. But I've learned to live with not knowing. I've learned to live with the loss. Raymond and I have exchanged a few more emails. We're not rebuilding our relationship. I'm not ready for that and may never be. But we've reached a place where we can acknowledge what happened and where we are now. Minnie and Theodore haven't reached out. As far as I know, they still believe I'm a toxic narcissist who deserved to be cut off. Maybe they always will. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Not because I've forgiven them, I haven't, not fully. But because I've accepted that I can't control what they believe or do. I can only control my own healing and my own life. My children turned me into the family villain. The next morning, I told the whole truth. Some people believed me, others didn't. But the truth was told, and that's what mattered. I lost my children, but I found myself, and in the end, that was enough. This powerful story proves adult children can weaponize therapy language. DARVO tactics: deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Estrangement epidemic is real, but hidden. Truth doesn't always win immediately, but matters long-term. Healing comes from acceptance, not validation. You can rebuild life after family betrayal. Grandchildren eventually question lies they're told. Your value isn't determined by others' opinions. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful family stories. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications. Drop a comment. Did Geneva handle this correctly? Should she forgive Raymond? Where are you watching from? United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Jamaica, South Africa, Australia, Trinidad, India, Philippines. Remember, if adult children accuse you of narcissism, document everything. Save texts, emails, evidence. Truth matters even if it takes time. Estrangement often based on false narratives. You're not alone. Support groups exist. Healing possible without reconciliation. Your worth not defined by adult children's rejection. Keep evidence if accused. Don't confess to abuse you didn't commit. Be here for grandchildren who will eventually question. Build new life focused on healing, not proving. Thank you for following Geneva's journey from family villain to self-discovery.